Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today on the last day of COP negotiations in the beautiful Mediterranean Pavilion, so we'll welcome you all. And we're here with a stellar panel to discuss the topic of women leadership in the climate arena. My name is Inês Duarte, and I'm the project manager at UFM for climate finance, and I'll be the moderating here today on this all-women panel, which cannot go unnoticed. I would like to mention that this event is organized by the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization and Climate Change of Turkey. And our speakers are Excellency Mrs. Fatma Shahin. She is the President of the Union of Municipalities of Turkey and Mayor of Gaziantep Metropolitan Municipality. She was previously Minister of Family and Social Policies between 2011 and 2013. Our second speaker is Mrs. Tatiana Hema. She is the coordinator of the Mediterranean Action Plan within UNEP MAP, and she will be speaking today about the region perspective. And finally, our third speaker is Mrs. Priyanka Tiluch. She is the intergovernmental specialist from the Intergovernmental Support Division of UN Women, and she will be giving the perspective of UN Women at global level on gender equality and climate change. So please allow me, before giving the floor to our distinguished panel, please allow me to do a brief introduction on the UFM and the role of the UFM, not only on climate, but also on gender. So before introducing the panel, I would like to mention that the UFM has a no woman, no panel policy to improve representation in the public debate, including always striving to include women in the panel, because we believe that it's inspirational for younger generations, but to see leaders and to see role models, but also because it passes a message. And obviously, having an all-women panel today is the capstone of that all. In terms of gender equality, I would also like to underline that very recently, less than a month ago, on 26 October, 42 ministers of our member states endorsed in Madrid a ministerial declaration to accelerate the strengthening of women's role in the Mediterranean region. This is a major accomplishment, and basically ministers agreed to enhance legal frameworks and improve women's access to leadership in public life and decision-making. The ministerial declaration was focusing mostly on 4 priority areas, and I'll briefly mention that. So first, enhancing legal frameworks. Secondly, improving women's access to leadership. Third, raising women's participation in economic life. And fourth, preventing violence against women and girls. So with this background in mind and with this context, I will give the floor to Mrs. Tatiana Hema, the coordinator of the Mediterranean Action Plan. And just to frame our intervention, I would like to give you a brief overview. So the UNEP MAP system is encouraged to promote women leadership in the region to effectively promote marine environment. Currently, we have seen a rapid progress for the involvement of women in the process. And Tatiana, would you mind explaining the current situation regarding women leadership in the UNEP MAP system? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ines. Good morning, everyone. I'm very honored and pleased to participate and contribute to this panel on women leadership in the Mediterranean region. In the Mediterranean region, I have the privilege to serve as the coordinator of UNEP MAP Barcelona Convention Secretariat. There is no shortage of women leadership and creativity. As we strive to implement the UNEP Mediterranean Action Plan medium-term strategy, for the period 2022-2027, we must find ways to harness the potential of all women to achieve progress towards healthy marine and coastal ecosystems and to fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals. This includes, of course, unleashing women creativity, ingenuity and commitment for climate action, especially adaptation to climate change around the Mediterranean. How we can ensure that this potential of women is fully tapped to achieve these important goals. On December 2021, 9 December, we pondered this question at a round table with women heads of delegation during the 22nd meeting of the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention and its protocol that was held in Antalya, Turkey. The discussion chaired by Her Excellency Mrs. Emine Erdogan, the First Lady of Turkey, and was attended by the heads of delegation women of the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention, and then also the Deputy Executive Director of UNEP, Mrs. Joyce Psuya, underscored the need to remove gender-related obstacles that hinder the ability of women and girls to fulfill their potential. Gender equality constitutes a common goal of the Mediterranean countries, recognizing its importance for sustainable economic, social, and environment development. However, the persistence of deeply rooted gender stereotypes and discriminatory practices unfortunately continue to act as barriers to women's opportunity, benefit sharing, and full participation in their countries' sustainable development pathways. Based on the Global Gender Gap Index, the state of the environment development in the Mediterranean, that a report that was released by UNEP MAP and its Regional Activity Center, Plan Bleu, in October 2020, indicates that the Mediterranean countries score particularly well in educational attainment. However, the report warns that economic participation and opportunity for women remains much lower than for the men in all Mediterranean countries. On political empowerment, the situation appears particularly challenging, and only 5 countries score better than the global average. So we have a lot of work to do, and we are working together with our partners, including Union for the Mediterranean, to address gender gaps in the region. And according to the 2021 Regional Progress Report on Gender Equality, it's very important that women's employment really can have an increase. We at UNEP MAP, now let me come a little bit what we do at UNEP MAP Barcelona Convention. We are very much determined to work on gender equality roadmap. In 2021, women representatives in the bodies of our system and in whatever activities that we do organize, they were very much large in numbers. And this is specific of MAP and the Mediterranean. In the coordinating unit, I mean the Secretariat of the Barcelona Convention, most of staff are women. Most of regional activity centers of UNEP MAP ensure a heavy lifting of the scientific and technical work and underpin the delivery of the program of work of UNEP MAP mandate have already reached gender parity. So we continue to actively promote the equal participation of women and men in meetings and activities related to the program of work. From the contracting parties representative to the UNEP MAP system, we are also very pleased to see there is a very good participation at high level of women, which means that Mediterranean, in terms of environment and sustainable development, really they have given a very important role to women, and this is really very encouraging. Beyond institutional demographics, we are pouring over gender dynamics in the delivery of our mandate. This thinking permits the entire portfolio of projects implemented by UNEP MAP program of work, which is supported from the Mediterranean Trust Fund, but also other projects funded from the EU or from GEF, to see how we can promote and build the capacity of the region in enhancing women participation and women leadership in the region. What I'm trying to say is that definitely we are very careful in promoting the contracting parties to activate women in the work of the Barcelona Convention. We do our best that when we elect, for example, officers for whatever meeting that we do, we make sure that we have an equal representation at gender parity, but we're also making a very good effort now to see how we can, from the substantive point of view and programmatic point of view, to enhance gender parity and gender equity. And this is what I'm trying to say, and in the way that we do it, we take care of, we analyze gender differences, we are moving beyond the vulnerability narrative. So women in marine and coastal settings are not just a vulnerable group. They are agents of change in climate adaptation, where they take up solution and climate resilient practices as early adopters. The third element is that we recognize women as capable steward of ecosystem, and also calls for women equitable participation in decision-making structures of marine and coastal protected areas. Now, I would like to give a specific example. As I said, we are doing our best, little by little, to enhance gender parity in the entire programmatic and substantive work of the MAP Barcelona Convention, but in particular the MED program, which is funded by GEF, they do have a very strong component on women. And it's very important because this program will be giving us opportunity as a UNEP MAP system to be better trained on how to continue our work in gender mainstreaming, but also to build the capacity of the contracting parties in doing better in this direction. Let me mention some of the elements. The MED program gender mainstreaming strategy. It's a pioneering effort, being the first GEF programmatic multifocal initiative in the region with the objective to reduce major transboundary environmental stresses in the coastal areas while strengthening climate resilience and water security. So it's a very important project in terms of substantive and programmatic elements. We have developed already 6 gender action plan for the 6 projects that participate to the program. And it's very important, as I said, because we are trying to build the capacities of the Secretariat and regional activity centers and to expand this work also with the beneficiary countries that are participating in this project. The MED program Gender Community of Practice was also established in June 2021 and meets on a regular basis. And a good practice example from the MED program include also a gender-sensitive climate risk assessment of 2 coastal hotspot areas. So this is also something that we are experimenting on pilot basis, and we can see in the future what we can do. So what I'm trying to say is that we are at the beginning in enhancing gender equity and parity in the programmatic and substantive part. We believe that the experiences that we are undertaking now will provide very good feedback for a much more profound and deep involvement in the future, and the Mediterranean region needs the commitment, contribution, creativity, innovation and leadership of all in order to achieve our very ambitious goal. At the last meeting of our contracting parties, we committed to a litter-free Mediterranean, climate stability and biodiversity conservation. And this is essential. This is why that it's very important that all of us, all actors, including women, have to contribute. This is essential to the much needed transformative change towards sustainability that we want to see in the Mediterranean region. That transformation can not occur if half of the society could not contribute to their full potential. We at UNEP MAP will do everything we can within our mandate to shore up gender equality for people and nature. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Tatiana. Moving on to our next speaker, Excellency Fatma Shahin. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Before giving the floor, we would like to hear from you. What are the scientific studies that you are foreseeing and that you are doing in your field, in your role? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Öncelikle bütün panelistlerimizi, kıymetli moderatörlerimizi, değerli dinleyicilerimizi, hanımefendileri, beyefendileri, şahsım, şehrim, ülkem adına sevgi ve saygıyla selamlıyorum.
I would like to welcome all the participants, the moderators, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself, my country and my government. Thank you.
Şu anda EBRD'nin yeşil şehir olarak, OECD'nin şampiyon şehir olarak ve Biraz önce de moderatörümüzün söylediği gibi şehrimin ilk kadın milletvekili, bölgenin ilk kadın bakanı ve şu anda partimin ilk kadın Büyükşehir Belediye Başkanı olarak huzurlarınızdayım.
I am here as the first green city of EBRD and champion city of OECD and the first female deputy of my city and the first metropolitan municipality of mayor in my party in Turkey.
Bunu nasıl başardık? Öncelikle bizim medeniyet kodlarımız 1400 yıl önce bizim sevgili peygamberimizin bize verdiği çok önemli bir miras var. Burada kadını ve erkeği birbirine emanet kılan, kadını erkeği birbirine üstün değil, birbirine emanetçi kılan bir medeniyetten geliyoruz. 1400 yıl önceki bir medeniyetimiz var.
We have succeeded this because 1400 years ago our prophet said us to be entrusted, women and men. They do not have any superiority over each other. They are entrusted to each other.
100 yıl önce Cumhuriyetimizi kurarken Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk'ün kadın ve erkeğin birbirinin eşitliği üzerine kuruyan bir cumhuriyet anlayışımız var. Cumhuriyet aynı zamanda fırsat eşitliği, kadını ve erkeği kalkınmanın bir parçası yapan bir anlayışla kuruldu.
Our republic was established a century ago by the Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk with the understanding of equality of men and women with the equality of opportunities.
20 yıl önce de Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımızın önce insanı yaşat ki devlet yanlışsın anlayışıyla kadın ve erkeği ikisini bir kalkınmanın parçası olarak kurulan bir modelin bugün 20 yıl sonraki temsilcileriyiz.
And 20 years ago, His Excellency Turkish President made a principle, live the human so that the government will be lived also. And with this principle, we are here today as representatives.
20 yıl önce eğitimde önce kadın dedik, sağlıkta önce kadın dedik, istihdamda önce kadın dedik. Kadına dair bütün sorunların çözümünde kadına yönelik şiddet başta olmak üzere önce kadın dedik.
We said first women 20 years ago in education, in health, in employment and combating against violence against women.
Bütün hukuki düzenlemelerimizi şu an Avrupa Birliği'nin en ileri kadın haklarına dair olan hukuki düzenlemelerle eşit pozisyona getirdik.
And we are aligning our laws with the European Union laws in regarding women equality.
Kurucu Aile Bakanı iken kadın hakları, çocuk hakları, engelli hakları, bütün dezavantajlıların haklarına pozitif ayrımcılık getirecek özel projeler uyguladık.
As I was the former Minister of Family and Social Policies, we have introduced special principles for women, for people with disabilities and for vulnerable people.
Bunu tek başına devletten, tek başına bakanlıklardan beklemeden en büyük uygulayıcı yerel yönetimler 2014 yılında Büyükşehir Belediye Başkanı olarak da sosyal politikaları kendi şehrimizde uygulayarak yönetime başladık.
We didn't expect this to government today, so in 2014 as the metropolitan city municipality, we started to implement the policies at the local level.
Şehir 2 milyonluk bir şehir.
Our city is 20 million population.
Suriye'deki yaşanan o karışıklıktan dolayı 500 bin mülteciyle daha çok kadın ve çocuk ağırlıklı 10 yıldır birlikte yaşıyoruz.
We are living with 500,000 Syrian refugees, especially women and children in this region.
Hiç kimseyi geride bırakmadık.
We haven't left anybody behind.
Kimsenin ırkına, mezhebine, cinsiyetine bakmadık.
We do not discriminate people according to their race, ethnicity and religion.
Yetim, yoksul, yaşlı, mağdur, mülteci kimse kapsayıcı ve katılımcı bir şekilde bir kalkınma modeli oluşturduk.
We have a development model which is inclusive and participatory, including all the refugees, orphans, old people, young people, including all of them.
Bunun adına Gaziantep modeli dedik.
This is called the GAZIANTEP model.
Birleşmiş Milletler'in bütün organlarıyla, UN Women, UNDP, UNICEF hepsiyle çok yoğun çalıştık.
We have worked intensely with the all bodies of the UN, especially the UN Women, the UNDP and UNICEF.
Avrupa Birliği'nin bütün organlarıyla çok güçlü bir şekilde kadın hakları ile ilgili çalıştık.
We have studied with the European Union organs, with European Union bodies about women rights.
Müsaade ederseniz bu Gaziantep modelini fotoğraflarla size anlatmak istiyorum.
Now, if you allow me, I would like to introduce the GAZIANTEP model with pictures.
Bizim modelimizde daha anne karnında destek başlıyor.
In our model, the support starts when the child is in the stomach of mother.
Açabilir miyiz?
Can we open, please?
Tamam, hemen bir 5 dakikada
It will
toparlayalım.
be a 5 minutes.
Modelimizde önce anneye süt bebeğe can projesiyle başlıyor. Çünkü annenin karnında bebek sağlıklı beslenmesi lazım. Bizim şehrimizde doğan her çocuğa hamile kadına günde bir bardak süt gönderiliyor.
Our project is called Milk for the Mother and Life for the Baby. And in our city, every mother candidate is provided with one glass of milk every day.
Bunu Suriyeli mülteci kadınlara da gönderiyoruz.
We are sending milk for the Syrian refugee women.
Bebek doğduktan sonra ihtiyacı olan en büyük desteklerden bir tanesi kreşler, okul öncesi eğitim.
The need of the baby after birth is kindergartens.
Burada Milli Eğitim Bakanlığı'nın dışında kendi sistemimizi kurduk. Her mahalleye mahalle kreşler oluşturduk.
Apart from the National Ministry of Education of Turkey, we have established our own system with neighborhood kindergartens.
Özellikle UNICEF'le birlikte çocuk gelin olmasın diye Suriyeli mülteci kadınları da içine aldığımız, çocukların eğitimde kalması gerektiği, çocuk yaşta evlenmemesi gerektiği ile ilgili özel projeler çalıştık.
We also have special projects with UNICEF regarding combating child bride, including Syrian refugees and keeping them in education.
Yaptığımız bu çalışmada gördüğünüz gibi UNICEF'in değerli başkanıyla özel bütün herkesi kapsayacak çalışmalar yaptık. Kadının ve kız çocukların güçlendirilmesiyle ilgili kız çocuklarının yönetime gelmesini teşvik edecek yaptığımız çalışmada özellikle kızlarımızı koruyacak ve karar mekanizmasına getirecek lise öğrencilerine özel çalışma yaptık.
We have special projects with the head of universe, including everybody, covering everybody, regarding empowering women and girls, and including women, especially the girls, in decision-making mechanisms, the high school girls in the decision-making mechanisms.
Annelerimizi koruyacak çalışmalar yaptık.
We have efforts to protect our mothers.
Engelli annelerimizin, işitme engelliyse anneye, işitme engelli annemize cihazlar dağıtarak çocuğunun ağladığını ve süt ihtiyacını gösterecek cihazlar dağıttık.
We have distributed devices for the people with disabilities, especially with hearing impaired mothers, so that they can understand when their children cry and need milk.
Bu yaptığımız sosyal destek çalışmalarıyla hem güçlü aile, çünkü biz muhafazakar bir partiyiz. Kadının da güçlenmesi, ailenin de güçlü bir şekilde yoluna devam etmesi gerekiyor. Aile akademileri kurduk.
We have established family academies because as a conservative party we are of the opinion that strong women means strong family.
Kadının çalışma hayatındaki önündeki engellerden bir tanesi yaşlı bakımı. Gaziantep Büyükşehir olarak yaşlı bakım destek sistemlerini geliştirdik.
We have improved the elderly care systems as the municipality of Gaziantep in order to enable women participate in working life more.
Özellikle meme kanseri kadınlarda çok olduğu için taramayı mahallelere götürüp seyyar tarama makineleriyle kadınlarımızın meme kanseri olmasını önleyecek tedbirler aldık.
We took precautions with mobile screening systems, especially against breast cancer for women.
Bu eğitim ve sağlıkta yaptığımız koruyucu tedbirlerden dolayı Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımızdan da özel ödül aldık.
His Excellency President awarded us specially regarding our efforts in this field.
Kadını güçlendirip kurumsal kapasitemizi güçlendirdiğimizde bir kadın bakış açısıyla nasıl yeşil şehir olduk, iklim ve kadın bağlantısını nasıl kurduk, bu bölümde de onu anlatmak istiyorum.
And here I would like to touch upon how we did establish the communication, the connection between women and climate.
İklim, bilim ve kadında, özellikle EBRD'nin başında da çok güçlü bir kadın vardı. Nasıl yeşil şehir olduğumuzu, iklim master planımızı, şehrin kirletici unsurlarını, enerji başta olmak üzere yaptığımız yatırımları burada anlatıyoruz.
Here we are talking about our energy investments regarding our green city in efforts in climate science and women, especially EBRD has a woman head so that our efforts were conducted in a proper way.
Biyogaz yatırımları yaptık.
We invested
Güneş
in
enerjisi
biogas.
yatırımları yaptık.
We invest in solar energy.
Bu özellikle Avrupa Birliği'nden aldığımız projeyle mekanik ayrıştırmayla organik ve inorganik atıkları ayırdık.
We have separated organic and inorganic waste with the projects. We take example from the European Union.
Bu yaptığımız çalışmaların sonunda Tarım Daire Başkanlığı'nı özel kurduk.
We established the Department of Agriculture specifically after these studies.
UNESCO'nun gastronomi şehriyiz.
We are the gastronomy city of UNESCO.
Kadın kooperatiflerimizi kurarak kendi ürünlerimizi organik bir şekilde kendimiz yetiştirdik.
We established women cooperatives in order to produce our products.
Bu verdiğimiz desteklerle kadınlar tarımda da güçlendi.
Women are empowered in agriculture with these supports, assistances.
Aile ekonomisini güçlendirdik.
We have empowered the family economy.
Kadını ve çocuğu güçlendirdik.
We have empowered women and children.
Tarım ve su projelerini destekledik.
We have supported agriculture and water projects.
Şehire 100 coğrafi işareti aldık.
We have geographical signs for the city.
Bu yaptığımız çalışmada ben aynı zamanda Belediyeler Birliği Başkanıyım. Gaziantep modelini bir Türkiye modeline çevirdik.
I'm also the president of Union of Municipalities of Turkey, and we have transformed the Gaziantep model into a Turkey model.
Hanımefendinin 2014'te başladığı sıfır atık projesi UN Habitat tarafından dünyanın en iyi çalışan çevre projesi ilan edildi.
The project carried out under the auspices of Her Excellency First Lady, the Zero Waste Project, was awarded by the UN Habitat.
Kadın başkan olarak da bunu en iyi uygulayan şehir Gaziantep seçildi.
As a woman mayor, the best implementing city is Gaziantep.
Şuna inanıyoruz, kadınsız demokrasi olmaz, kadınsız kalkınma olmaz.
We are of the opinion that there is no democracy without women and there is no development without women.
Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And thank you very much for the very comprehensive presentation. So, I mean, I take note from things from the Family University, from Agriculture School, trying to empower women, but also to the programs that you mentioned with EBRD, with multilateral development banks, on green cities, solar power plants. So thank you very much for this overview. Very, very, very important to stress that. I will, before giving the floor to our next speaker, Mrs. Priyanka Tiluk. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, please correct me. So Priyanka is within UN Women. She will give the perspective of UN Women at global level. But we have a question just for you. So we would like to hear from you. What is UN Women's approach towards supporting women leadership for climate action? And what does the UN Women consider to be the main drivers of success for increasing women's leadership and securing climate justice. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to join this panel today and for choosing to focus on this issue. I'm honored to be included here among my fellow panelists. As mentioned, my name is Priyanka Tilak, and I'm part of UN Women's team that serves as focal point for the Rio Conventions on climate change, biodiversity, and desertification. And thank you very much, Inez, for your question. Bringing the global perspective to kind of round out what the panelists have been mentioned in terms of very specific initiatives, our focus at UN Women towards the climate and gender nexus is very first and foremost informed by the overwhelming urgency of the climate crisis at this stage, and the fact that we won't be able to meet 1.5 degree temperature rise without taking on board solutions across from all peoples, all communities, and that includes women and girls in their full diversity. So we're really focusing on how to scale up a whole of society approach in response to the climate crisis. And it's not only a matter of equality and justice, because this type of leadership, as you've heard, is already proven to lead to more effective and holistic solutions across the board. So we know from our work and our research that the more women that you have in positions of power, in government, in the private sector, the more ambition you see for stronger climate policies and actions. And this applies for young women and girls as well. Just over the last few years, we've seen how the climate discourse has just shifted quite dramatically, just based on the climate movements that are happening at the global and national levels. And this is in large part due to the leadership of young women and girls. But despite this evidence, we know that women and girls are still missing from the decision-making tables, from the community all the way up to international climate negotiations, as we've seen these past couple of weeks. And this is particularly distressing when we consider what's been happening these past 3 years. Essentially, the pandemic rolled back decades of gains in gender equality. We've seen a drastic rise in gender-based violence, in economic insecurity, in job losses, in unpaid care work. And all of this has dramatically impacted women and girls, disproportionately impacted women and girls. And it also prevents them from being able to respond to climate impacts. So earlier this year, UN Women convened CSW 66 in March. And this is the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, which is the largest global gathering of gender equality advocates from both government and civil society. They meet every March around International Women's Day in New York at HQ. And this year they tackled the theme of gender equality and women's empowerment in the context of climate, environmental, and disaster risk reduction policies and programming. So the member states came together to recognize in their negotiated conclusions that women's leadership is key to making this type of action and governance more effective at all levels. They also called for a just transition to low carbon and climate resilient development pathways that is responsive to women's skills and needs. And they also agreed to increase financing for such initiatives. So we have more recognition globally that women and girls are more than just vulnerable beneficiaries of climate actions. Rather, they're already creating and implementing solutions, and their skills and experiences are crucial for building resilience and for fostering the types of system change that we're looking for at all levels. So essentially, while climate impacts are functioning as threat multipliers, they're increasing social tensions, it's increasing divisions, it's amplifying conflict. Gender equality is actually operating as a benefit multiplier. So in that it strengthens cohesion and security, and we see the impacts of these positive benefits from the community level amplifying all the way up to the international level. And in terms of what we consider to be the main drivers of success for increasing women's leadership, part of the answer to that question is to make sure that policymakers see how gender inequality and the climate crisis are interrelated. And there are many ways to approach this answer, but the most immediate and practical way of answering this, of making sure they're seen as intertwined, is to make what is currently invisible more visible through the data, the research, and the evidence that's needed to inform climate policies and programs. And this data is currently missing across many of the sectors that are addressed by national climate plans, meaning nationally determined contributions or national adaptation plans. And when that data does exist, it tends not to be disaggregated by sex or age or other characteristics. So one way that we work on generating this information is breaking down the silos that often exist between gender ministries and climate-related ministries. So really building that institutional collaboration at all levels. But it's also important to interrogate why that data is missing. And there's a direct correlation between how our societies view the reproductive labor, the unpaid care work and domestic work that many women and girls perform on a daily basis globally, and how our societies undervalue the natural resources that underpin our planetary health and our collective livelihoods. The drivers of both gender inequality and the climate crisis are reflections of the beliefs and the practices of a system that fails to recognize, to value, to protect, and to invest in what is essential and necessary for our collective well-being. So we need to green our economies by promoting alternative development models that ensure environmental sustainability and gender equality. And we need to strengthen universal protection systems that address the climate and care nexus. In terms of policy, we focus on making sure that the regulations related to natural resources and productive assets, such as land, water, and energy, are more responsive to the needs of women and girls. And girls' education, particularly in STEM fields, is another very important factor that is overlooked as a potential solution for climate impacts. Research actually does show how countries can become more resilient for each additional year of schooling that girls receive. So I'd like to mention here a couple of initiatives that UN Women works on to address some of the issues I've just mentioned. And one example is the Women's Resilience to Disasters program, which leverages women's leadership to build collective resilience to disasters and threats, which includes climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic, in communities and countries that are at high risk of impacts. So earlier this year, this program actually launched a toolkit for assessing women's leadership. So the framework and the tools were piloted in Vanuatu, and it proved to be a way of establishing a baseline against which to see the concrete results of how transformative women's leadership can be for building collective resilience through measurements of participation, advocacy, partnerships, capacity for supporting leadership, and funding. And the results and the toolkit are all available online. And on the climate and care nexus, we recently launched the transformative approaches to recognize, reduce, and redistribute unpaid care work in women's economic empowerment. So this initiative actually builds on a flagship program that we have on climate resilient agriculture, which works with women farmers to reduce the carbon footprint of the sector, but also to increase their adaptive capacity by shifting to agroecological techniques in farming and to renewable and energy efficient technologies and through access to land, finance, and markets. So this new approach that was recently launched will promote sustainable technologies and infrastructure for reducing unpaid care work and domestic work while building climate resilience. Underlining all of these issues that I've mentioned, however, is limited access to finance, particularly for grassroots leaders across the global south. A minuscule amount, less than 1% of global climate funding goes towards advancing gender equality, despite the multitude of positive linkages between the two areas. So we absolutely need to increase financing for women's machineries, for civil society organizations, and for networks. They often tend to be politically marginalized or are otherwise unable to engage with these types of initiatives because of a lack of time, of resources, or technical expertise. And lastly, as our executive director, Dr. Seema Bahus, mentioned in her op-ed, which was published on Gender Day earlier this week, we need to reverse these harmful gender imbalances in decision-making spaces in all levels. So I'll repeat her ask to the COP here, which is to take special measures, including quotas, to increase women's and girls' leadership at all levels of decision-making, particularly for women from rural, poor, or marginalized communities. So I'd like to close today just by reminding again that women and girls have always been leading environmental movements. What they need and what we need to do is to support their voices and agency and to strengthen the infrastructure that allows them to meaningfully engage in these spaces. And these areas that have collaborative work that I've mentioned here today, data, resilience, finance, data with leadership, this forms the foundation of our climate work at UN Women. And we invite everyone to work with us to strengthen and elevate the voices of women leaders, because advancing gender equality is really one of the most vital solutions that we have for building our collective ability to address the climate crisis. And I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. Very, very inspirational. I mean, I retain a few words from your speech that we need to scale up the whole society approach. It was also very interesting to hear that the more women in power, the bigger the ambition. So it's important to bear that in mind. And also to reflect a bit that it's true that we've had examples of young women leadership, such as Greta Thunberg, such as so many others. But at the end of the day, we still don't have a lot of women at the negotiation table. So there is still room for improvement, definitely. And we do need to make to work with data and make visible the invisible, as you mentioned, because only that we can scope the depth of the problem. We have still a bit of time, and I would like to, we have basically 7 minutes. I would like to open the floor to the audience if there is any question. We could take a few questions from the audience. If not, I would have a question for our panelists, definitely. Is there any question from the audience?
Yeah. Thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear this presentation. And as a former, I am working with development. I am the project manager, and I am here with the delegation of Togo because I currently work on eco-villages in Togo, but I've worked also in Turkey before. And I really compliment His Excellency Ms. Fatma for the work they're doing in Gaziantep and in all over Turkey. And I would like to acknowledge also the role of Turkish women in management, not only at the level of community level, but in the management of ministries. Me working with the air quality department, I have actually witnessed what was the role of women, and there is a lot of potential there to actually expand climate action thanks to the human resources that Turkey has, and thanks to the effort that has been done by the government of Turkey by enrolling women in schools. But my question really pertains to the last intervention, and I heard something really interesting, which was the correlation between the interest in, let's say, unpaid workload for women, basically, and the basically environmental concerns that most governments has. So I wanted to know whether there is a study in place to find that correlation, whether there are documents, relevant documents where that correlation could be found. And well, at the border of this side event, maybe we can speak about all the initiatives that UN Women is pursuing, because there are many interesting initiatives that could be applied to many developing countries in which I am currently working, and in which maybe the help and the technical trainings of UN Women could really scale up the initiatives that we're already taking at the grassroots level. So just this is my question. It was first a compliment to the government of Turkey and to the work that has been done, and it was very nice to see all that. And then I wanted to know if there's a study about that correlation you talked about.
Is this working? Thank you so much for your question. I think in terms of a particular study, I would be able to point you to a field of research that's really starting to emerge now on what we're calling the climate and care nexus. So it's more about like the invisible resources that sustain our collective livelihoods, both in terms of the women's work, as I mentioned, the unpaid care work, but also the natural resources that we tend not to count in our sort of economic accounting of national GDP or other measures, economic accounts. So there isn't a building body of research that's looking at how our attitudes towards these two sectors are really informed by our overarching economic model at this time and what needs to be done to reverse this. And it's really a focus on unpaid care work, and I'd be happy to share more resources on this, but essentially that's the framing of it, the climate care nexus.
Okay, thank you. We're really wrapping up, but I would also like to hear from our other speakers. we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to ask to be very brief, so 2 minutes each. And I just have a very generic question to the panelists. So what do you think are the main obstacles to women leadership in our region? Because we zoomed out a bit, but I would like to zoom in. We are here in the Mediterranean Pavilion. I would like to know what are the main challenges and what are the main solutions. So in 2 minutes, if you could wrap up and also try to end up with a positive outlook on what is already being done and what is working. Thank you. I will give the floor maybe first. Who wants to take first the floor?
Yeah. What I would say is that we have very good conditions, because education in Mediterranean is quite in very good, and I believe that education is very important, which gives and allow us much better condition for women to play a more important role than what they are doing now. What in my view, I think biases is the one that blocks a little bit the bias. This is what we said, and we don't understand, but it can be even within us. You see what I'm saying? Things have changed. You see women today everywhere. You see women in the shipping sector that we never thought that would be the case. So what I'm trying to say bias, we need all of us, including women, they have to fight the bias which are within them. So this is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Ben de öncelikle sorunuz için çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you for your questions.
Bu meselelerin konuşulması bile ilerlediğimizi gösteriyor.
Even talking about these issues means that we are proceeding.
Güçlü liderlik gerekiyor. Önce buna inanmış bir ekip gerekiyor.
We need strong leadership and a dedicated team to this end.
Kadınıyla erkeğiyle bunu bir kalkınma modeline dönüştürmek gerekiyor.
This must be transformed into a development model with women and men.
Kadını güçlendirirken erkeklerdeki zihinsel dönüşümü de birlikte buna hazırlamak gerekiyor.
While empowering women, we must also change the mentality of men.
Bunu bir toplumsal seferberliğe dönüştürmek gerekiyor.
It must be transformed into a social mobilization.
Bunun önündeki engelleri kaldırmak için yerel düşünüp ulusal ve uluslararası arenada daha güçlü işbirliğini kuvvetlendirmek gerekiyor.
To eliminate the obstacles to this end, we should think local but act internationally.
Aslında bugün tam da yaptığımız bu.
This is what we are doing right now.
Yerel düşünüp ulusal hareket etmek ve kendi buna inanmış, yetişmiş insan gücünü altyapısını oluşturmak.
We are thinking local and cooperating internationally and have a dedicated team.
Ve buna bütçe ayırmak, bu işlere bütçe ayırmak.
Allocating a budget for these efforts.
Finansal destek olmadan bunları başaramayız.
Without financial aids and assistance, we will fail to accomplish all these.
Daha da mühimi, bu meseleler büyük bir koordinasyon istiyor.
All these matters are needed a great coordination.
Dikey değil, yatay koordinasyon gerekiyor.
A horizontal coordination is needed, not a vertical one.
Kim bunu başarırsa hem rekabet etme gücünü artıracak. Çünkü artık şehirler yarışıyor, ülkeler yarışıyor, bireyler yarışıyor. Kim bunun altlığını hazırlarsa geleceğin dünyasını o kurmuş olacak.
Whoever succeeds this will establish the world of future.
Biz Türkiye olarak Cumhurbaşkanımızın liderliğinde bu alanda çok ciddi güçleniyoruz ve ilerliyoruz.
As Turkey, under the leadership of His Excellency President, we are proceeding and being strengthening in this area.
Elbette çok sorun var.
Especially we have lots of issues.
Sorun çözme kapasitemizi yüksek tutarak yolumuza devam ediyoruz.
We are improving with a high level of solutions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all. Okay, so just wrapping up, we have 1 minute. I would just like to thank all my distinguished panelists. It's a pleasure to be here in an all-women panel, which is very, very rare. And it's not the gender day, so I think it's a major accomplishment. And I've heard 5 things that I would like to underline. So basically, we need education, we need to fight the bias, we need more data and to act on that data. We need to have finance, obviously, because if there is no budget or no finance to address this, it's just words. And we need to start social mobilization. Thank you very much. I hope this panel was a good food for thought, and I hope that we can continue on this cause. Thank you very much.